My name's Andy Ferg. I live in regional Victoria, which I love. I've done a lot. I've been a filmmaker and an artist and a scallywag. I meet a lot of people, especially when I write about. I travel everywhere. It's a great area around here. But people tell me these amazing stories. I think, wow, look, I'm a compulsive sticky beak. So, if anyone starts telling me something, I'm like, do tell. And these are people that haven't shared their story before or don't feel they're special. But I do. I think they're really special. And look, I really appreciate them sharing their story. It's like they're giving me a gift. So yeah, here they are, pretty much.
Are we rolling?
Yeah.
Oh, far out. Oh, well, look, in a way, I can blame my maternal grandfather for who I am. He lived in Stratford in Gippsland, and somewhere as a kid, I would get, evidently I was subject to bouts of glandular fever and scarlet fever. So they'd put me on the train with a relative or a sister or a cousin to go to Stratford in Gippsland. My grandfather was a great character. He would read to me, read poetry, he loved poetry. He boasted that he was on the road with Henry Lawson, that he'd panned enough gold to buy a ring for his bride. And he loved Shakespeare because Stratford had a statue. So as a child from the age of 4, I learnt that there were poets in the world. And he would read to me. He had the most lovely voice. I can hear his voice now. He had a big black moustache that sort of wiggled when he spoke. And he also was responsible for naming me. My full name is Kenneth Graham. It's exactly the same as the author, except I've got no E on the end of my Graham. But however, all of that just made me wonder as I got older whether he knew something I didn't early on. At school, because I was probably a difficult child, I was a dreamer and often lost my own thoughts. I was a Catholic school. My mum insisted the children be raised Catholics, even though she married a Protestant. And my dad was wonderful New Age kind of character up to a point. My first sense of success in life that I needed really badly because they were failing me every year at school and telling me that I had to be put up because I was too old to be kept down. Arithmetic I had no problem with, reading I had no problem with, and writing, even though my handwriting wasn't the best. But I was always told I was a failure. I was held up against my brother who was dux of his class and dux of his college eventually. As a runner, I was very good, middle long distance. So I got picked up by a Ballarat running club and started winning state heats. The school was St Paul's Technical Penitentiary, I call it. It was supposed to be a trade school for Catholic kids, but we didn't really learn any trade. I think I made a coffee table the whole 3 years I was there. They had an annual race run around Lake Wendouree in Ballarat. Form 1 I won it, Form 2 I won it, Form 3 I won it. 3 prize nights, didn't get a mention, didn't get a look in. So I was considered the kid you just get through and forget about it. Nevertheless, running was my first taste of success. I also thought I wasn't good looking. I thought I felt bad about myself. But I was lucky enough to have some really wonderful friends, young boys and a young girl, that taught me a lot about life and the world. Different countries, different politics. I learned about politics young. My grandfather was interested in politics. He was a wobbly. Workers of the World, I think they were called, before the Labor Party. My dad was a member of the Labor Party, but was also a member of the Masons. So I pretty well blame my grandparents. But it's turned out terrific. I'm a terrific poet, and I'm not saying that just out of my own... I know I am. I've had enough people tell me, but I can tell a good poem. I've got specific rules for my own poetry writing. If I can't engage the person, I don't use it, you know. I want my poem to be perfectly understood. My mum and dad and my 2 brothers and sister living at home, plus a sister, a married sister, 3 married sisters and their kids. A whole bunch of us went to Port Campbell for a holiday. Whilst we're there, I met a young girl, Yvette, who was French. She was very well read, terrific command of English, and introduced me to French literature at a really early age, 14, you know. But we had a terrific, intimate relationship at that young age.
And what was that like? Because that would have been your first intimate relationship?
No, it was my second.
Right. What was your first?
With a boy.
Right.
Yeah.
And when did that happen?
The month before. I used to train a lot for my running, even though I didn't have to, because I had a paper round 4 nights a week and on Saturday afternoon. It kept me fit, but I loved running. So I would go and run from my place around Lake Wendouree, rest in the park on the way home. In the entrance park to Victoria Park in Ballarat, near the lake, are 2 big old Boer War cannons. So I would, at the end of my run, I'd stop there and I'd rest on the cannon and have a break. I was sitting there in this cannon one day, and this boy walked up to me with long blonde hair, and within 20 minutes we were an item. He was really smart. He advised me a lot about what it's like to be gay. I didn't even know the term gay at that stage. All I knew about were poofters, and I didn't even know there was a word called homosexual. So I was learning a lot real fast. But he was a good, smart kid. He was well read. Through him I learnt about politics, gay life, nuclear war, great writers, great movies. He was amazing, a font of information, and I guess we fell in love. For whatever reason, and it's something to do with his family, I don't know what happened to him. He just one day didn't turn up at our meeting. His mum wasn't living where she lived. His dad, and never heard. Great thing that crushed me down as a boy. Took me a long time to get over that. Blaming myself, as you do. But anyway, nevertheless, the relationship with him was really soul building for me. It made me know I wasn't ugly and hateful, that I was actually good looking enough to have a boyfriend and a girlfriend, and I was smart enough. I wasn't dumb. So those things were important for me to get a grip on liking myself, and I went from really loathing myself to really being in charge of myself and not being afraid. So by the time I left Ballarat, I was kind of cured. I already knew at that stage I'd probably write poetry. Hadn't written any, although I had lots of them in my head. I had no sense of smell. I was blind in my left eye, but these 2 facts I didn't know until I was aged 10. I didn't know about my eye until I joined the Air Cadets and we did some eye tests. I still got in the Air Cadets. I didn't know about my lack of smell till an incident at school where a boy smeared shit on my jumper. And when I got back into class, everyone was laughing and my friend said what happened, and I had my first real fight, which was terrific. Me winning the run around Lake Wendouree in Ballarat. And he come up to me in the toilet and patted me on the back, and I was confused because he was a dickhead, this kid. We didn't get on at all. His name was Malin, of all things. Anyway, he was a dickhead. But when I got into the classroom, the kids were all laughing. And my friend Terry stood and told everyone and the teacher that Malin had smeared shit on my jumper. I peeled my jumper off, I had a look, I saw red and jumped on him and bloodied him's nose. And I had an inspiration for that because I had seen my father drop a guy in the pub one time and with a blood nose. And he said to me, when I asked him afterwards, he said, "I'm not a fighter, but if you have to fight, go for the nose." So that's what I did. And it turned out to be a victory. It made me feel really good about myself. So I got enough successes outside of school in relationships and other things to make me love myself enough, not to be crushed down by it. I had one dream in mind, my 15th birthday, when I'd be legally able to leave school. I planned to go to Cairns, but that was verboten by my mum. I was sent to Canberra, where I had a brother living in the public service. It wasn't until I got to Canberra, when I was 16, and then when I was 17 and a half, I was taken to a poetry reading group at the ANU by my history teacher, who is a poet, Jeff Page. There I met a bunch of really fabulous poets, Les Murray and Martin Langford, Alan Gould, Mark O'Connor, really a bunch of good poets. And they said, "Have I got poems?" I said, "I haven't got any written down, but I've got 2 or 3 in my head." So the first poem I ever told anyone was this one. Once, in an old green backyard when Mum was tall, out of the warmest sky a wind thief stole a white bedsheet off the line. Off the clothesline, out of her hands, the sheet swirled away smaller than sand. I, child, watched amazed, wondering where it would fall. Of this remains my consternation and mother's lack of recall. The first poem came to my head, first poem, and they went, "That's good. Wow." That was another way for me to feel good about myself. And I guess my journey as a kid to being an adult was learning to like and appreciate myself so that it worked. And I'm very comfortable in my body. Have been since my early 20s. There were the periods of time in life that were terrifying. The AIDS epidemic was probably the saddest time of my life. A lot of friends lost. But in another way it was good, because I learned other aspects about myself that I didn't know,
Like what, for instance?
I didn't know I was compassionate. I thought I was a bit off-putting, because I didn't have a lot of interest in people that weren't interested in what I was interested in. But during that, I had to care for some friends occasionally who were ill, dying. That brought me much closer to the essence of life and empathy, compassion, qualities I now hope I've got enough of. But qualities I learned then I had to work on. That's what that taught me. I had to open my heart a bit more and not be so afraid of difference and afraid of things I can't control,
And just going back on the French girl, just tell the story about her and what she gave you.
Well, she was terrific. Quite developed for her age. So much so that she had pubic hair and breasts. Short. So her hang-up was that she thought she was a shorty. But she was very beautifully spoken, good English and clever, and knew a lot about politics. And she was brave. Like, first time I saw her, she was swimming out in the middle of the Port Campbell port. And I thought, geez, that's a bit far out. But she was diving underwater up in it. She taught me to overcome my fear of the water and to dive down. Sometimes in her caravan, she had pointed out books like Candide, Colette, Anatole France. I said, "You've read this?" She says, "Anatole France is what Charles Dickens is to the English." I said, "Oh, okay." And I had not read Charles Dickens, only heard of him. So from then I went straight to the library to read Charles Dickens. And boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. That's another thing where I love her for, because when I read Dickens, I really fell in love with this serious social changer. You know, I thought he was great. And I was shocked that the cruelty depicted in that, the children in mines, the beggars, the poverty, the disease. As a young fellow, that shocked me to the core, that people had the capacity for such inhumaneness to each other. That taught me. But the French girl, what can I say? I think I said to her one time, "Are you going to get pregnant now?" She says, "Oh, no, it's too early. You have to have hair. You have to have pubic hair before. This is just fun now." I said, "Yeah, it's fun. I didn't have pubic hair at that stage. I had a pencil. It was same as with my boyfriend. I said, "Look, I'm not fully grown up yet." And he says, "Oh, you're grown up enough for me, you know." And being gay, you know, he just loved it. But I did everything that a gay person would do, and I said, "This is fun. Is this sin?" So I knew the fun part overwhelmed the sin part, but also he was a caring kind of guy. He had great values, and they oozed out of him. He was also smart. He said nice things to me, you know, built up my confidence and ego. So those two kids in the same 4-month period, so I knew him for a good 6 months, and then Yvette just for 2 weeks. When we left Port Campbell, it's because my father was shot. He was digging around the tents one day to make channel because it had rained, and I was sitting across on the swings. I saw him fall over, and I ran over, and he says, Get Mum, I've been shot." "Mum, Dad's been shot." "What?" Well, it turned out it was a .303 bullet from a long way off, penetrated right into his shoulder, but not near any vessels or bones, so they left it there. The fat policeman considered it's a stray bullet theory. That's what it came out, the stray bullet theory. That's what the story's called. But I wrote a letter, because we were now going home, the holiday's over. I wrote a letter that never got answered. In my short story about it, when we've left and when Yvette and the family come back after being away for a few days, they find that our tent's gone. The potatoes, that's the name I've given our family, it's Benjamin Potato. The potatoes, so she runs down to the manager's office. "Oh no, they're gone." But I have her father going to the door of the caravan, finding a letter, looking at it, putting it in his pocket. So I never heard from her again, which was really sad, because I did fall in love with her immensely. I thought I was the luckiest guy in the world to have a clever girlfriend, and that was another thing I had to learn when Paul disappeared out of my life. Both those kids, I had to learn with grief and like it's a death. In 1966, my father died, whom I loved and was very close to. That gulf, that actually set me back a bit. I lost a lot of faith in myself, and by the time I got to Canberra, I was a bit of an emotional mess. Hitchhiked off to West Australia, basically, across the Nullarbor. In those days, hitching wasn't as... Well, it didn't seem as dangerous as it is perceived now. I had a terrific suitcase. It was an oil can, the top cut off and then hinged on, and a little latch. So I put my clothes and boots and camera in that. But it looked like an oil can, so I always got a ride. It was. I never had to wait very long. Because they think they're taking me down to get petrol. I've never been a huge drinker. I'm a real pothead. You know, I had adopted the drug culture rather than the drinking culture. I've never been irresponsible as to want to shoot up. I've never used heroin. I've smoked opium, and I've, had all the kind of amphetamines you could invent. LSD I really liked. But I thought I'd settle on marijuana because I could take it or leave it. I can go for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks without it. And in this day and age I have to because it's very expensive. So, I'll buy a month's worth and then I won't smoke for 3 months. And then I think, about time. I really enjoy it. I like the relaxation it gives you. And I think because I've got a bit of a crowded mind, my mind never stops thinking. When I'm stoned, I can get a clear line of thought. And that just be my excuse, I don't know. But that seems to work for me. I do a lot of scribbles, and out of those scribbles I might get something, but I don't worry too much if they're good or bad or indifferent. For instance, this is just rubbish that I've got right in here, but it's on something I want to write about. To loaf, to loaf, to loaf, to loaf again and again, to be free on my back on the couch, that all that needs to be done is to lie down, look at the black behind your eyes, and think only of how warm you are. Think harder. No, don't think at all. Think that nothing comes to your thoughts, and pretty soon you'll be asleep. Now, that was a lot of thoughts that I'm thinking about in there. I thought because I have sleep apnea, look, my last wife said to me, Ken, you're a great fuck, but you're terrible to sleep with. Lucky I'm happy enough in my own skin not to be lonely, frankly. So that surprises some of my friends. Say, are you lonely? And I go, well, no. I'm grateful for that aspect of my personality.
Filmmaking is incredibly expensive, and when it became less expensive, that would have given you access to another form of creativity.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so
It
just talk
gave
about
me an extension. Normally, poets, when they get old, they disappear and die. They just do. They just go away. I've got a list of great poets that I've grown up with. They're all died. Who remembers them? I remember them because I've made films about them. I'm fascinated more by the future than now. Because, as I think I said to you before, our generation brought more change, social change into the world than any generation ever. I want to use my part of that to talk to this fucking dodgy future, AI, racism, conservatism, hating gaysism, all that. I want to stop them going that direction. So in my poetry, from this way time back in history, that's my part. To try and keep some sane empathy and sanity in the world. To know that if we do become AI, will we still fuck? Will we still have love and emotion, crying and laughing? You see, I know that must not sound serious. I'm very serious about this. I'm worried that humanity might deball itself, and knowing that we are capable, humans, of fucking real stupidity. Trump, Brexit, us cancelling the treaty to Parliament, things that make you utterly ashamed to be alive, they're still happening. They've always happened. I'm beginning to realise I'm just part of an ongoing soup, and hopefully I can put a bit of flavour in.
just getting back on, I suppose, that era where you were in a position of putting your poetry out there, but also recording other people's poetry.
Oh, I'd like to talk a bit about that.
Yeah, because there must have been a group,
Yeah.
like Dadaism or whatever.
Yeah. Well, there was a group, headed by, I guess, a fellow called Shelton Lee. Brilliant, brilliant poet. These are the Melbourne ones. Eric Beach, Mal Morgan, from Tasmania, Tim Thorne, Judith Rodriguez, what's her name? Geordie Albiston. These were terrific. I'm not mentioning them all, but there was a bunch of a dozen brilliant, forward-thinking, radical men and women of varying ages, some old, some young, exploring performance poetry. And I wanted to explore it too, because to me as a kid, I always understood it not so much as an art form as an entertainment. That's how I saw it. I could see it was art, but I thought it's also standing in front of people saying, moving your mouth. Very early on, I got interest in what I call the 3 Ps: pace, pronunciation and projection. So a bunch of the other poets were doing that. So I'd let rip, I'd be doing cooey on stage and yelling out and jumping around. And I thought I was different because I based all my stuff on what I consider the classical poetry rules. The good old 4 beats, the rhyming stuff. But I didn't care too much about what form it was, so long as it flowed. It's got to flow like water to me to make it a good poem. In 1989, I was so pissed off with Fringe because up until then, there were no bloody poets in the Fringe Festival. But I went to a meeting one time and there was a beautiful woman called Pals Vaughan who was running it. She said, well, if you feel that way, why don't you do something about it? So the next year I put on 3 shows. Nightclub poets at a really great restaurant I was working in the middle of town called Little Riata's. Very famous in its day. It was a 6 p.m. till 6 a.m. restaurant. It had harboured politicians and journalists and stuff. I was drinks waiter. Around the corner was a place called the Outpost Inn. It was a folk establishment run by Trappist priests. Not a bit religious. It was wonderful. Margaret Road night. A whole bunch of famous singers would sing there. And they had poets there. And I became house poet. I did 4 nights of about 15 Australian poets from Sydney and Adelaide and Melbourne called nightclub poets. And these were all who would perform. And they did. They performed their socks off. We got full houses every night. I got funding to do that. The same weekend, I put on one called the Poetry Cup, modelled after the one in Hobart with Tim Thorne. Anybody could join in, didn't matter. The other one was Shelton Lee. He was such a drinker and rapscallion, beautiful and wonderful. I couldn't have him in a nightclub. I just wasn't going to take the responsibility. So I set up at the Punters Club, the Radical Poets. Oh, he loved it. He sat in a big chair up there, and now we're going to bring up Adrian Rawlins and stuff like that. Those 3 gigs, I got a good filmmaker to film with me, and that turned out to be really, 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 really good. I got dozens of, because most of my films are short, 5-10 minutes. Poetry, don't want to drag it on. And so I met hundreds of these poets, individuals, with the text. And it, got a bit of attention, but nothing to write home about. But it kept me busy, kept me involved, and that's what I wanted, to be involved. I've also made a couple of documentaries, mostly interviews, but the biggest one I've done, and I'll never do it again, was called The History of Melbourne Poetry Venues, 1970s until 2021. 7 hours. So each episode's an hour, each decade's an hour. There was just so much material. Lucky it was during COVID. So I sat here with a bag of dope and for 8 months assembling and editing. I got really confused at times. Didn't know what I was fucking doing. Never done anything like this before. Hated myself for taking it on. But by and by, it got this kind of drift. And lucky, there's a lot of terrific musicians in the poetry scene. So plenty of music. And I had enough film segments, because mostly it was going to be photos and old posters and what have you. And just to keep it rolling along and bubbling along, you know, and it turned out to be pretty good. So normally my films get between 100 and 200 hits. The doco was getting 500-700 hits each one. That was good. The most hits I've got is about, what's 17K? What's that? 1,700. That's
175k.
Yeah.
175k, that's fantastic.
Yeah, that's for an English poet.
Wow.
Maxine Benica Clark. She's fucking great. I just got one poem of her at the Wheeler Centre. I didn't even know I was going to film that day, but people said, oh, she's good. I quickly set up. And there was a poem about her childhood growing up, racism in England, and that's a fucking great piece. But that just went through the roof. Shelton Lee, he gets up into the thousands too. Mine, the most I've got for one of mine's about 700. That's fine. Now, I will say this. There's two of us in Melbourne, myself and a poet called Komninos Servos, who have put such long service into the poetry scene. But you know what? We never get invited to festivals, talkbacks, anything. And it just beats me. Why? Because we've got the runs on the board. But no, and I was talking to someone who helps run the Tasmanian Festival, and I said, well, your name just never came up. So I don't know why, whether I know I'm not a bad poet. I must be my friendly personality. Must be something like that. But no, that Commonwealth talked about that only recently. I applied to a poets union for funding to buy new cameras. The only word I got 2.5 years ago was it's been sent to committee. I've applied to Melbourne City for funding. No. I applied to the Arts Council. No. So there's some hex on Ken Smeaton. Well, I've got other lesser-known poets, and I won't say names, I'd love to rub their faces in shit, but who have got funding to go to Rome to conferences and here in New York. I'm not going to cry about it, but it puzzles me because I've got the runs on the board, lots of publication, really good reviews. It's just the way it goes. Now, on top of all that, I am at peace with myself. Even though I have chronic sleep apnea, I know how to go to sleep. I've taught myself how to close my eyes and concentrate on not thinking, going into the black. Now when I get into bed, I have this gorgeous feeling of getting into warm, comfy. But for many years going to bed, I hated it because I would sleep badly. I'd disturb my partner. It was awful and took me a long time to get to the grips. And since living with myself, I don't bother myself at all, if you know what I mean. Yeah, the only part I'm finding a challenge is this getting old bullshit. There's no handbook, you know. I don't have to yet, but I'm probably going to come to needing nappies soon. For many years, I actually worked as a carer for older people and, neck down injuries, totally wheelchair people. That taught me great humility, but I couldn't keep it up. It was emotionally very, very draining. And after about 5 years, I said, look, boss, I can't do this anymore. He said, let's understand, we have a lot of attrition because of that business. But I've learnt to like myself, understand who I am, my faults, my weaknesses, weed. But I haven't become what I most fear. I haven't become violent. I'm not a drunk or a drug addict. And I haven't done prison time. Oh, well, you can count 2 days in Brisbane lockup for protesting, but it doesn't count. I feel somehow my lack of international fame, I feel I've really done my job, you know. I feel good about the poet I became. And I do feel that when people read my poetry, they'll get a sense it's real. This is the real thing. That pleases me more than any accolade or anything, you know. I'm pleased I had that little bit of talent to give back to this world that you can't help but love it. The nature, the genuine people. I say that advisedly. But, you know, you only get one life. One life. I'm not worried about the death, because to me, the end. What's everyone so worried about? It's nothing. And that nothingness, I understood when I started to learn how to meditate, which that's what it is, even though I didn't know that's what I was doing. I was just trying to still the thoughts in my mind. It took a long time, 6 months at least. Now I can do it as soon as I lie down. But if it's long enough and you keep it up, oh, there, a face will go drift by there. A vision of an eye, a vision of a valley. You get these fucking visions that come before you drift off to sleep. It's like for free gifts. So all these people are talking about meditating and that, they're gilding the lily a bit too much and how terrific we are New Age. But the actual technique works. It just is all that bullshit around it, hippie bullshit, New Age stuff that is so boring. But I'm interested in the technique worked. It's an ancient technique. It understands the crowded mind, and it understands that, you know, the mind needs to stop every now and again because it's got so much going on. Even when we're unconscious of it, the mind is still ticking away. Here we are in today's age, and I'm worried about the future. I really am. Worry about all those children yet to be born, people yet to be born, because the life journey, it's fucking good, is it not? Is it not? Look what we're given, 2 legs, a couple of arms, a head, and it's out into the world. And this world, it's not that easy. For us here in the rich countries, it's not it's a breeze. But I often go back to the Aborigines when we got here, the African countries, the Asian countries, the suffering that we, the white blokes in the world, brought about. So I feel a great weight of responsibility as part of my activism. Guilt, sure, it's a big guilt, not my guilt, but it's the collective guilt. I don't personally feel guilty, but I feel angry that my lot have been the ones that caused such terror and horror and murder and mayhem. It's a big responsibility to be a white guy these days, you know, because we've got a lot to contend with, to be correct to our women, to be correct to different people, gays, trans, black people, you name it. There's no reason for our European colonial mindset to exist anymore, you know, but it just seems hard to get out of the heads of liberals and Republicans, you know, these two sets. They seem dyed in the wool, don't they, with meanness or something, a mean streak, greed or jealousy, insecurity. Now, they're the ones with most of the money. What the fuck are they being insecure about? The base evil, capitalism. Democracy in America being ruined at the moment by capitalist precepts, capitalist concepts. Europeans got healthy democracies, but they've got a handle on their capital. There's always going to be corruption, but there's always going to be good people too. So, you know, that's my fight, you know, the struggle to keep Earth afloat, you know, hoping that we, in the end, we make it through.
What would you tell your younger self to help them, just give them a little bit of a push on to get on with it and be a little bit more appreciative of themselves?
Okay, don't be afraid to tackle the hard topic. Don't be afraid to think outside the paradigm, but also don't be afraid to be ordinary. You know, we don't have to be brilliant every moment of the day. In a sense, it's the essence of feeling a peace within yourself. I'd tell a 12-year-old, hang in there, Ken. Hang in there with your drawing. I'm a good drawer. Hang in there with your running. I didn't know so much about the poetry then, but I'd tell them, keep drawing, keep running, keep reading. Those three things, running, drawing, reading, gave me such pleasure that pleasure was the antidote to my quite deep sadness. You know, there were times I had some really dark thoughts. Like I would think, I'll go out into the garage and get that gas Dad always talks about and just put it in my fucking throat and write a note how I'm going to kill myself and all that. But then when I'd written a note, I'd get this revulsion. But it happened half a dozen times, usually after an episode at school. That was important to me as a kid to prove that I wasn't what everyone thought. I did all right for considering that I didn't want to really do anything much. Mum was disappointed. She said, I'm pleased about your book, but there's no money in poetry, is there? No, there's not, Mum. I just have to be a poor person all my life. How are you going to cope? I said, oh, as long as I can eat, and I'll be happy, you know. The government looks after poor people, you know. But she said, you don't say to people you're poor, do you? Because Mum so wanted to be upper middle class. Oh, she tried so hard. It was embarrassing, but you know how parents are. I do love her, and I understand she had it tough having 11 children and being quite talented as a youngster. As a youngster, she was very good at reciting poetry. Poetry's always been part of this Australian adventure, if you like. We had our bush poets. Soon as Lawson and Paterson developed the sound, that sound took off. And when I was travelling in West Australia, some of the country towns, we'd go to the country show, they'd have bush poets. The day at the races at Tang Malang Maloo and all that kind of stuff. Terrific. Some would do Lawson, some would do Paterson, you know, they're kind of serious parts too. It's interesting to me that, you know, we didn't lose the poetry imperative in Australia, you know. Such an odd art form too, you know. It's really like the bottom of the bottom, you know. You got to like what you get, you know. So I'd much rather be a jet pilot, if anything, in life, you know. We really had our choices. You know, fly fucking F-11s or something. It'd be fun. Shoot down Russians. You know, I'd love to do something like that. But never happened. The boys in my neighbourhood, working class boys, pretty tough and rough, and a lot of drinking families, unfortunately. So anything was likely to happen. They were mean, a bit rough, a bit tough, a bit bullyish. But once you learn how to handle yourself, like, wasn't until I had the fight with Malin at school over the shit on my jumper that the other kids in the neighbourhood took me seriously. And we were set. I hung out with the kids that other kids didn't hang out with much, like Terry Nile, his family, Aboriginal. Boris from next door were Polish, and the other Boris was, there were two Borises, how about that, was Finnish, Finland. So quite early on I learned that there was this war between Finland and Russia. I said, what, they invaded you? He said, yeah, the bastards trying to invade them. But we beat them back, but they still took our land. I said, but that's where we were living, so we came here. I said, fine. He showed me where it was on the map, and I was astounded. I said, but isn't it freezing? Very cold, yeah, very cold. Not like Australia. We knew Italian kids, because we had the Italians, the Greeks, the Poles, and a few other smattering Europeans in that first wave in the 50s after the war. Great people, great. Oh, our family, our street, filled up with Greeks and migrants from Europe. Dad called them the Itais, even though in the pub, him and the Itais were having a great time. He wasn't any way at all racist.
You've got a daughter,
Yeah.
and
Bella Michelle. She's named after her mother, Michelle. Beautiful Michelle. Because I must admit, Michelle, what a beautiful woman. Talented, rich, and necessary that.
but you, so you just touch on your relationships with men and women, whatever,
Yeah.
throughout your adult life,
Yeah.
and how that influenced you, or you influenced them.
Well, my sexuality has been very, very important in my life ever since as a kid. I learned very early on about sexuality. I like it a lot. I'm not overwhelmed with it. For one thing, in the gay world, I wasn't taken by the drag queen set and the club set. I couldn't stand the music, frankly, in gay clubs. Too crashing, too loud, too much attention. I preferred the private gay drug parties. I was shocked at myself at times. I'd wake up sometimes in someone's flat and 6 other blokes I hadn't even met before, and that worried the shit out of me. I had a great time until the AIDS spectre came along, and I plunged into a deep sadness and depression and fear. So I cut pretty much all my gay relationships. Tried to desperately go straight, which didn't find really hard because I'm a genuine bisexual. I get as much joy from women as men, which, thank the gods, if I knew one. But I didn't, that was an awful period. A lot of very close friends died. My dearest nephew died, really badly and painfully too. It was, I visited lots of people in hospital. It was not a good time, that just made me be a bit more reasonable too, about not aching so much for sex. So I realised, sex has its cost too. And I'd had some great sex, so I hadn't actually missed out. But I thought it was a smart thing to just close off 90% of it. So since then I've had 1 or 2 serious boyfriends, not so much even boyfriends, just fuckmates. And I've had, 3 boyfriends and 3 married. So I'm married 3 times, thinking it was going to work. The beginning was great, but my sleep apnea fucked them up. I was terrible to sleep with, which really pisses me off actually. Because I wanted the first one to go. She was a talented, wonderful woman, a terrific horticulturalist, knows the name of every Latin fucking thing in the world. But she was also frail, and when I met her, beautiful but frightened, and I brought her out of her shell, and we were real. So we took off and travelled the country together just after AIDS. So we took off, worked seasonal workers for 2.5 years, all over the east coast, Tasmania. But unfortunately, when we came back, it wasn't sleep apnea that ruined us, even though it was causing problems. I had a bit of a fling with a mate, and was really high, and she wasn't supposed to come home, but she did. And she didn't like that. She felt betrayed. And I felt very bad. I was the bad boy in that, bad boy. So of all my relationships, that's the one I fucked up the most. The second one was the birth of my daughter. Well, that wasn't a marriage. She just wanted to have a baby with a poet. And I was quite happy to, because she's a good woman. I had no worries about her being able to do the job if I was only part-time. And since I've become a full-time dad anyway, I'm very pleased. The third one, Japanese girl, I couldn't believe how beautiful she was. And well, she was fine, but no, I wore her out too. These awful nights trying to sleep with Ken, yeah. We're still mates. I'm still mates with them all. Nowadays, I don't have any hankering for a relationship. I've got very good friends. I've got other deep friends I can talk about any topic on I wished in private, and So I'm landed on my feet, so to speak. Not ending up sweeping streets, as my mum would say. Although I crossed my mind, I might not be far away from it occasionally. I know what I'm good at, what I'm not good at. I'm good at being myself, really good at that. I'm good at with other people. My best talent is putting people at ease, because I think my best quality is I like people. And the fact that, except for when I was quite young, I haven't had any serious depression. And I know what that's like with friends who suffer it. I know it's a serious thing. But I've been spared to do a lot of interesting, dynamic, powerful, creative work. Really happy that that's been my footprints. So, I think, considering I've not really made a name for myself, I don't really care. I'm going to die happy. I love the work that I've done that is good. I know the people that appreciate it, know why they appreciate it. And I feel like I've contributed in my tiny way. I've already bought my plot at Newstead. It's on a hill, out of town, overlooks a floodplain. It will never be built on. So that view will always be there. So I've got this poem, it'll be in my next book. It goes something like, I can't remember it all. Here as you stand overlooking this beautiful verdant view, below your feet a poet lies, a man who became rich in poetry. That's not exactly it, but that's generally the idea. I don't like cremation. No, it's too much of Catholicism and the afterlife and all that bullshit. I like the idea of the deep, big sleep, and I like the idea of a memorial, nevertheless. There's that stone. He was here. That's important to me, that I was here. I don't want to leave the earth as a cipher that nothing happened about. I don't know if I've changed anything or even can possibly change anything in the world, but I hope that my presence is enough. You can't hope for a lot in this life, but if you feel that you've been able to, I don't know.
Plastic.